My go-to app that I work with outside of what I talked about before in terms of Google's Nik collection, which is apparently no longer available. It's available through a different distributor, and it's not a standalone, and apparently they're charging for it. So let's go to Plan A, actually, which is Camera Plus. It's an app that you can download through the Apple's App Store. Search Camera Plus, and it comes up. You see it there, and all kinds of great go-to tools with this. Some filters are already available. Clarity is probably the most popular one, and that's the one that would be similar to what's happening within the Nik collection with high definition or high dynamic range photography that way. So that's a pretty valuable app, or pretty valuable filter that I use, and I'll show you how to use that later on. Other types of applications in this, working with depth of field and filter adjustments, things that way, getting into color manipulation, all kinds of things. So I'm not going to show you how to use necessarily the camera portion of the app. It's pretty intuitive. Maybe when I'm back out on the road again, I'll do a quick tutorial on just shooting with the app. What I like about the camera portion of it is if you're just beginning and you start to use the rule of thirds like we talked about in a previous video, it comes up with an automatic tic-tac-toe grid, if that's what you like, over your viewfinder for the camera, which is pretty cool. I like it. It also has a leveling bar in it, and for some reason, as you'll see a little bit later on, that comes in handy. For life of me, I just can't get a level horizon, probably because my head's not on straight. Anyway, this is what your images will look like in the light box, which is your editing area of Camera Plus. You see two different types of photographs in here, photographs that have been previously edited, which are there without that film-like frame around them, and then the photos that have not been edited, that have the frame, the photo look to it that way. For the intents and purposes of this video, I have actually edited some of these photographs and then put them out to iPhoto, and then I've re-imported the raw images for the sake of this tutorial. One of which then is this one. If you've been following ADV at all, you've seen this before. So I'm going to use this as kind of our guinea pig to go through and show you how the app works, especially in terms of some housekeeping in terms like leveling or straightening, or maybe doing some cropping and then getting into clarity. So when I bring this up, it comes up with some default menus. You see the highlighted menu where it says none, clarity, auto, flash, portrait, and there are more on that as well. And then below that it says scenes, and then crops, and then lab and filter and frames. So we're going to kind of bounce back and forth between those. In fact, the first thing I need to do with this photograph is straighten the horizon. Okay, it's leaning to the right a little bit there. So I'm going to go through and click on the lab, and in the lab you see more tools pop up. The main clarity tool, rotate, flip, straighten, tint, and others. I'm going to go to straighten, and when I do, this is what comes up, and it comes up with a grid to see where it needs to be straightened, and actually the app will go through and straighten it for you automatically. Or if that's not to your liking, you can use the toggles on the left and right hand side of that sliding bar and go through and toggle it to how you like it. I like this, suits me fine, so I'm going to go back out then into the scenes. Now, here's where I want to go through and get into clarity. Before I do that, though, let me show you on that highlighted bar, we have clarity, auto, flash, portrait, and here are some others. If you're shooting food, if it's backlit, nighttime, shade, and so on. Dozens of different tools to work with to go through and get the best out of what it is that you're wanting to do. The tool I use the most is clarity. And what that is the high dynamic range tool. Now, it might have been pretty subtle. You might not have seen that. So I'm going to go back to the last slide, watch the image instead of the bar down at the bottom. Okay, so that's the image that we've straightened out. And now I'm going to hit clarity, and you can see that I get more structure and a little bit more color saturation going on, which is what I want. And especially I want structure out of those clouds. I'm going to do that one more time and bring that back in so you can see it, and you see the clouds produce more structure, and then the structure around the bike. We really love the detail around the tire as it's laying down there. Okay, so Lots of great tools there in terms of what's going on. If I go into the lab, then I can click on Clarity Pro, and you have to pay a little bit more for this. I think it's $10 for the rest of the tools that you have going on. And now I have independent controls here in terms of intensity or vibrancy boost. Now I can bring the vibrancy up a little bit, and that's kind of pushing the envelope. If I go too much there, too much color, too much saturation, I've kind of left the realm of reality there. And I can mess with intensity, and that's the structure of the image here. And I like a little bit more structure. I like what's going on in terms of the contrast with that. There are other tools at the very bottom there too that get into contrast, color saturation. There's a tool you need, it's there. Okay, it's very powerful in terms of the kind of Photoshop elements that you have involved within that. So that's kind of where I like it there. I like that image, and so I'm going to hit done up at the top right, the blue done, and that takes me back out to Lightbox. And at Lightbox, then I can go through and export it. I can save it. I can share it. I could put it up to social media at that point. What I've done here then is, here's the actual, the unedited image to kind of A/B this back and forth. All right, and here's my edited image as it goes. So it's powerful, and I like what's going on here, and I like the fact that I could do this all on my iPhone. Here's one more image. You've seen this shot in the cliffs near Virgin, Utah. And not a bad photograph to begin with, a little washed out up at the top there. I could probably use a neutral density filter, a graduated filter on this to kind of even that out. I don't have one on my iPhone, so I'm going to go through and use, again, the Clarity tool. And if you watch as I make that transition, my highlights in the bike come up a little brighter. I pop a little bit more color. The bottom 3/5 of the image now are a little bit more in line in terms of exposure of the rest. I'll toggle that back and forth as well so you can see. And I'm pulling out, in terms of structure, more contrast in what's going on in the image between your darks, your highlights, and your shadows, and just makes that a whole lot more interesting to look at. All right, so I hope this helps you out. My name is Eric Young. I'm the founder of Utah ADV. And if you want to see adventures, a blog of my travels, you can see it here at utahadv.wordpress.com. And you can subscribe to this YouTube channel. All right, talk to you later.